The whole room went dead quiet the moment Gavin said it. 2 minutes late and you're out, he snapped, waving his stupid Mont Blanc pen like a traffic cop directing humiliation. His voice cut through the morning buzz like a buzzsaw. Time is money, people. Mike just cost us both. And just like that, the guy who built half our cybersecurity infrastructure got publicly executed for showing up 2 minutes late to a Monday morning stand-up. No one breathed, no one moved, not even me, and I was just the intern. One more clipboard with legs as far as Gavin was concerned. Mike didn't argue, didn't flinch. He just walked past Gavin's desk, pulled something from his pocket, and placed a black flash drive right next to Gavin's almond milk latte, like he was delivering a funeral urn. Then he nodded once, low, subtle, like a man closing a door behind him, and walked out of the office. Let me say this now. You're going to want to stick around for how this ends. And hey, 97% of people listen to stories like this without subscribing. But if you like true power reversals and silent revenge, hit that subscribe button and tap like. It really motivates our team to keep unearthing these corporate war stories. Back to that moment. I remember Gavin blinking at the flash drive like it was radioactive. He didn't pick it up, didn't even touch it. Just shifted uncomfortably in his overpriced chair and waved us back to work like nothing happened. All right, people, show's over, let's focus. But nobody was focusing, not really. Everyone saw what just happened, and everyone was thinking the same thing I was. Why the flash drive? See, Mike wasn't just some guy in IT, he was the guy. The one who patched our systems after the Q3 breach 3 years ago. The one who stayed until 3 a.m. when the entire email server melted down in 2021. The one who, when legal or compliance didn't know what the hell was going on, always had the logs. So when Mike leaves a flash drive on your desk after you fire him for showing up 2 minutes late, that's not a resignation. That's a detonator. And Gavin? Gavin didn't even see it. That's what got me. This guy parachuted into our company like some Wall Street action figure. Tailored suit, buzzwords for days, probably read half a Harvard Business Review article and thought he was Moses, descending with 10 commandments of disruption. He came in swinging axes, slashed 3 departments, rewrote protocols nobody asked for, fired 2 senior analysts for redundancy, and started pushing his mirror strategy with this shady offshore data architecture none of us could fully trace. But Gavin's golden rule? Don't ask it. Don't ask compliance. Don't ask anyone who might actually understand what he was doing. Especially not Mike. Gavin said Mike was too slow, too analog, too legacy, told him to stay in his lane, cut his reporting channels, blocked him from all major policy meetings, and even reassigned his junior staff to Agile Ops pods. The last straw came 2 weeks ago when Mike flagged a permissions change tied to a folder Gavin had ordered sealed, and Gavin brushed it off like lint. This is why we need younger blood, Gavin said, sipping that damn almond latte. You people panic over ghost folders. Nobody's accessing that mirror system except authorized vendors. Vendors? Right. So when Mike showed up late this morning, 2 minutes late, Gavin pounced. Not because he was mad, because he planned it. He wanted a scene, a power play, an execution, and he got one. Except there was that flash drive. After Mike left, I glanced around the room. Everyone was typing, clicking, pretending, but every eye kept flicking back to Gavin's desk, to the tiny black device sitting there like a loaded weapon. He still didn't touch it. Can someone get facilities to clean out Mike's desk? Gavin asked, adjusting his cufflinks like a man trying to act unbothered. And someone notify security. He's no longer authorized for building access. I stood up quietly and walked toward the kitchenette. From where I stood, I could still see the flash drive, untouched, waiting. 15 minutes later, Gavin was laughing on a call with someone named Anton. Sounded European. No, he's gone. Dead weight. Can't build an empire on tape backups and paranoia, you know? Dead weight. That was the moment I started keeping notes, because something in me knew that flash drive was going to matter. Something about the way Mike looked at it before he set it down, like it wasn't a goodbye gift, like it was a key. To what? That part. We were about to find out. He stopped smiling sometime in February. That's when I first noticed it. Mike, sitting in his corner cube long after most people had packed up and gone, staring at his second monitor like it owed him child support. The overhead lights had already gone into power-saving mode, but his screen glowed like an interrogation lamp, bouncing reflections off his glasses. No music, no muttering, just silence, calculated, surgical. I used to walk by and say goodnight. He'd nod. That was it. But over time, that nod turned stiff. Not cold, just tight. Like he was holding something in his jaw, something heavy. What I didn't know back then, what none of us did, was that Mike had already started building his own audit system. Not a replacement for the company logs. A mirror. Hidden. Passive. Designed to watch without interfering. Kind of like him, now that I think about it. It started when Gavin cut him out of compliance meetings. No warning. Just a calendar update with his name removed and the note. Not needed. Focus on systems, not strategy. Then the real red flags started appearing. Gavin issued an access grant to a folder buried in the Mira drive. 6C Mirror 1. That was the name. Generic, harmless sounding. But the permissions list was weird. Vendor logins that didn't match any approved partner in procurement. Subnets that traced overseas. A few credentials that looked like old sandbox profiles. Until Mike ran IP checks and realized they were active. Someone was using ghost accounts to slip into shadow folders Gavin had ordered created. So Mike did what Gavin told him to do. He didn't ask. He just watched. Every access ping, every file copy, every new credential Gavin's pet DevOps guy added on the sly. All of it, time-stamped, tagged, traced. He didn't tell anyone, not even legal, not even his team, because Gavin had made it clear, this isn't a democracy. I don't need people asking questions. I need soldiers executing orders. And Gavin? He was smart enough to sound confident, smooth enough to pass for a leader in PowerPoint meetings, but not careful, not clean. He left fingerprints everywhere. He started using Slack aliases, told people it was role-based separation for transparency. Mike traced every message to a master credential tied to Gavin's own machine. He rerouted risk assessments, cut them off from Mike's dashboard. Mike logged every change and mirrored the new policies into his private ledger. He fired 2 employees in risk and audit for misalignment with operational direction. Mike downloaded their exit packets and tracked the time gaps between their final reports and when the logs stopped updating. At some point, Mike realized he wasn't working for a company anymore. He was working inside a machine that was building its own exit strategy. Because Gavin wasn't just cutting costs. He was shifting liability. and he was using foreign mirrors to do it. That's when Mike stopped trying to fix things. That's when he started building the file. It lived on a partition Gavin didn't even know existed, buried inside a training directory from 2020, masked as archived onboarding materials. But underneath the innocuous file names, Welcome Kit Update for VPN Training Video, was a full schematic. Access logs, folder trees, Slack thread archives, credentials, transfers, IP geolocations, everything. And Mike kept going. Every week he'd add another entry, like he was carving notches into a prison wall. He told no one. Because if he told someone, they'd have to choose, stay silent, or get fired like the others. So he watched, quiet, methodical. While Gavin strutted through the building, pretending he was reinventing infrastructure with phrases like agile velocity and cost synergies. By May, Gavin had started hinting at a full departmental restructure. Said legacy compliance was on the chopping block. Said Mike's skill set is dated. That same week, Mike added the final log entry to his archive. 6C Mirror 1 accessed via vendor IP Riga. No new proxy credentials created. Same digital signature as 422 and 315. All access patterns identical. Confirmed tied to shell entity via payment trace. Then he backed it up on a flash drive. Small, black, nondescript. It wasn't a bomb. It was a receipt. And he placed it on Gavin's desk without saying a word. He didn't need to. He'd already said everything in the audit trail. And me? I only understood the depth of it later, when I went back through the folders he left behind. But at the time, all I knew was what he told me before he left. Quiet, almost to himself, like he was speaking to the wall. He said, "Don't ask it," so I didn't. Then he paused, and I swear he smiled for the first time in months. I just watched. Mike didn't even take the elevator. I watched from the hallway window as he walked straight down the stairwell, hands in his pockets, like a man who'd just mailed his last letter and was waiting on the thunder. No one stopped him, no goodbyes, no forced HR escort, just the sound of his boots echoing down concrete steps, and then gone. Outside, he didn't look back, didn't check his phone. Just pulled up his hood, crossed the parking lot like it wasn't the graveyard of 22 years of service, and disappeared behind a row of Teslas and rental SUVs. Gavin didn't look up once. He spun in his chair like a king after a beheading, tossing out smug little quips for the next 20 minutes. Something about cleaning house and how accountability starts at the top. Even made a joke about retrofitting Mike's cube into a nap pod. But that flash drive stayed right there, unplugged, untouched, like a cursed artifact. 45 minutes passed. Then legal knocked. Not politely. It was Meredith from Risk Council, the kind of woman who didn't believe in toner shortages or open-toed shoes. She walked in holding a printout with a red-stamped header and said 5 words that stopped Gavin mid-joke. Who owns folder 6C Mirror 1? Silence. Dead, heavy silence. Gavin blinked. What folder? Meredith raised one eyebrow. 6C Mirror 1. It just triggered a high-sensitivity export flag. Automated packet detection. Finance got a ping and kicked it up. Gavin spun his chair toward his screen too fast, like he needed it to shield him. That's a vendor testing folder? Internal sandbox? Legacy crap. Meredith didn't move. Why's it communicating with an overseas node in Riga? The pen Gavin was fiddling with dropped to the floor. He didn't pick it up. His voice came out thinner than usual. That shouldn't be happening. Oh, it's happening, Meredith said, tapping the paper. This signature matches a previous flag from March. It was ignored. Gavin stood. Okay, relax. We've had mirror drives for years. Half this architecture's built on replication. This is just noise. But she wasn't listening to his excuses. She was looking at his desk, at the flash drive. What's that? Gavin stared at it like he'd never seen it before. Nothing. Mike left it when I let him go. You looked at it? No. Probably some resignation sob story or his 2 weeks in haiku form. You know how legacy guys are. Meredith didn't even smile. Plug it in, now. I don't. Now, Gavin. He hesitated, then grabbed a USB adapter and slotted the drive into his laptop. The screen blinked. A folder popped up. One file. Index.so audit chain. Master Meredith leaned in. Open it. He double-clicked. I couldn't see the screen, but I didn't have to. All I heard was Gavin whisper, "Oh shit," then louder, "Who the hell has access to that?" His face went pale, like bones under glass. He started scrolling, fast, too fast to be processing anything, more like a man looking for the end of the nightmare, not the meaning. Why is my terminal on this log? He asked no one in particular. Why is Anton listed in the vendor trace? Meredith leaned in. That's your offshore proxy, isn't it? The one you routed through procurement? I never approved. No, that was just... She didn't blink. You issued the folder creation on your account at 6:47 a.m. last month. That's here, in the Slack archive. See? She pointed to the screen. Gavin shrank, then his phone rang. He picked up immediately. Anton. But it wasn't Anton. I could tell by the way his mouth flattened and his eyes twitched sideways. Whoever was on the other end wasn't saying what Gavin wanted to hear. Just shut it down. Shut it down. The call ended. He stood up, yanked the flash drive from the laptop, and turned to Meredith. This doesn't leave this room, understood? But she was already walking out. 10 steps into the hallway, she paused. Compliance gets this next, she said over her shoulder. Gavin didn't follow. He just stood there, frozen. Meanwhile, Mike was 3 blocks away. Corner booth, hole-in-the-wall coffee shop with no Wi-Fi and a strict cash-only policy. He stirred his espresso with a plastic knife, opened a paperback he'd been rereading since 2007, and smiled like a man who had finally set the gears in motion. He didn't check his phone. He didn't have to. The countdown had already begun. The sound of Gavin's shoes slapping the polished tile echoed like gunshots down the hall. He was running, actually running, in a $2,000 suit, knocking into desks and snapping at anyone who made eye contact. His voice hit that frantic octave just north of managerial control. Who authorized access to 6C Mirror 1? Nobody answered, because nobody even knew that folder existed. He stormed into IT first, nearly tearing the door off its hinges. Where are the logs? He barked. Carl from Network blinked, mid-bite of a protein bar. What logs? For the mirror folder, the Riga node. Carl frowned. You mean the sandbox you told us not to touch? You explicitly said it was above our clearance. Gavin's nostrils flared like a bull's. I never said that. You did. In writing, Carl added, spinning in his chair to pull up the chat thread. February 6th. You wrote, "Do not touch mirror folders. Not your concern." That one? Gavin's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Then the landline rang. It never uses the landline unless it's internal escalation. Carl picked it up, listening for maybe 10 seconds before slowly covering the receiver and turning to Gavin. It's security. There was an anomalous folder access this morning, 9:03 a.m., the folder you're yelling about. Gavin's face turned the color of copier paper. Anomaly. What kind? Carl listened again, then repeated. Foreign IP, partial credential spoofing, session timeout after 12 minutes. Matched previous ghost access logs from March and April. Gavin stumbled back. That's not possible. The terminal was offline. I shut that node down last week. Carl shook his head. Nope. You shut down the monitoring alerts. The system still logs in the background. It just doesn't notify you. What's the timestamp again? 9:03. That number hung in the air like a noose. Gavin whispered it under his breath. He walked in at 9:05. Carl looked up. Wait, this was Mike's machine? Gavin didn't answer. He just turned and bolted. Down the hallway, through legal, past HR like a man fleeing the scene of his own crime. He made it to compliance and nearly crashed into Meredith's assistant, sending a pile of reports flying. Where's Meredith? In a review meeting. Interrupt her, now. Tell her the Riga folder was accessed this morning. It's not contained. The assistant blinked. Sir, I don't. Just do it. Gavin's phone was already out. He thumbed through contacts until he found the offshore number labeled A Logistics. No name. He called, no answer. He called again. Voicemail. He dialed a backup number, another burner saved as Ops Proxy EU. Deadline. By now, his hands were visibly shaking. Sweat was pooling under his collar. The man who used to brag about heart rate variability and cold plunges was now mumbling numbers like a casino junkie. He dashed into procurement. I need all vendor contracts from the past 6 months, especially anything routed through Latvia, Estonia, or, Christ, anything east of Frankfurt. Procurement director blinked. Gavin, you approved those partnerships directly. We never saw paperwork. You used executive routing to bypass us. I what? The director opened his inbox and scrolled. Here, you sent a memo titled, Strategic Vendor Engagement, Skip Legal Review, Time Sensitive. You CC'd only Anton V on a non-company email. Delete that email. We're under audit lock. I can't. Then the worst thing happened. The overhead lights flickered, just once. But in an office built around optics, that one flicker meant the system had tripped something. Back in IT, Carl was already emailing a Level 3 alert to Risk and Legal. Subject: Uncontained node triggered. Potential export control breach. Gavin was now sprinting back toward the executive wing, muttering to himself. He fired the shot before I fired him. He stormed into his office, slammed the door, and finally, plugged the flash drive back in. This time, he went deeper. Not just the master audit chain, but the folder tree Mike had mirrored. And there it was, dozens of subfolders, each with a name, a timestamp, an access ID, each marked with a little note. Hidden transfer, Gavin override. Export routing key match, Anton V. Slack approval trace, deleted 315. The deeper he clicked, the faster he unraveled. Each folder was a thread, and Mike had woven a noose out of all of them. He slammed his laptop shut and collapsed into his chair, breath shallow, heart thudding. He tried the offshore number again. Still nothing. The only sound now was the low hum of the AC and his own pulse echoing in his ears. The time on his laptop read 9:51, not even an hour since he fired Mike, and his empire was already on fire. He thought he was untouchable. Gavin always talked like a man with 10 lifeboats, and no intention of ever getting wet. His favorite phrase? Everything's manageable if you control the narrative. That was his version of religion. He didn't believe in rules, just optics, which is why when he opened that audit tool Mike built, really opened it, he stared like he was seeing a ghost that remembered everything he buried. It wasn't flashy, no colorful UI, no dashboards, just lines, pure text logs scrolling like a priest reading a funeral list. Access path, user credential, timestamp, IP trace, repeat, 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 and every fifth entry, a note, written like Mike was leaving breadcrumbs in Morse code. Unusual credential structure? Session forged from clone subnet. Export key generated WO compliance hash. Slack approval missing audit trail. They read like confessions, not from Mike, but about Gavin. And then he saw it, the folder labeled Redacted Proxy 03, with a user tagged under his own Slack alias, GavOpsX. At first, he thought it was a spoof, but then the logs confirmed it. Terminal ID, IP origin, MAC address. It was his machine. Gavin felt his stomach fold in on itself. He had used the alias to rubber stamp a Slack approval back in April, a lazy way to look engaged, while Anton handled the foreign node behind the curtain. He thought deleting the thread the next day made it vanish. It didn't. Mike had archived it, saved the HTML structure, the packet signature, and even embedded the rendered message. Approved, push through, ops only visibility. GavOpsX. Next to it, Mike had written, Slack MSG deleted 24 mines later. Logged IP mismatch. Internal override. WO compliance chain. Another folder showed login activity from a vendor who no longer existed. Someone Gavin had quietly killed off in the system to hide the root. But Mike had caught that too. He ran a timestamp diff, showed the credential deletion lagged 6 minutes behind a successful folder upload, which meant Gavin scrubbed the identity after the file was moved. Not before. Everything was precise, not paranoid, documented. The kind of logs that don't scream, just whisper until someone listens. Gavin leaned back, breathing hard. The AC felt too loud, too cold. He looked at the audit tool like it might grow teeth, because Mike didn't build it to stop anything. He built it to remember. It had been running for at least 6 months, maybe longer, quietly sitting behind the firewall, disguised as a service ping tool tied to an old network scanner. It updated itself manually, off the grid. Nothing cloud-based. Nothing that could be accidentally purged by Gavin's new DevOps automations. Mike had been watching the whole time. And the worst part? Nobody else knew. Legal had seen the folder access. Compliance had seen the export flags. But nobody had seen the whole picture. Not yet. Only Gavin. And the realization hit like a throat punch. If he could connect the dots in under an hour, the board wouldn't need more than 10 minutes once this hit their inbox. He was holding a loaded revolver, and all 6 bullets had his fingerprints. He scrolled further, faster, looking for a loophole. A file that might show Mike was bluffing, overreaching, maybe something fabricated. Instead, he found a summary log titled Chain of Custody README. It started with a single line. This tool does not prevent mistakes. It only refuses to forget them. And under that, an itemized list. Every folder Gavin created, every time it was accessed, every credential assigned to it, and every timestamp where a file was moved, modified, or exfiltrated. Mike had even color-coded the ones tied to external nodes. They were all red. He tried to shut the program down, clicked the red X in the corner. It didn't work. The tool blinked once, then a new window appeared. Close request denied. Logged activity is now under lock. Underneath, a signature. Mike's full name, time-stamped, digitally notarized. Gavin's hands began to tremble. He whispered, How the hell did he even know to look here? But he already knew the answer, because Mike had always known. Gavin was too loud, too proud, too lazy with the details. He thought control meant silencing people. But Mike didn't need to speak. He just built a memory that wouldn't lie for anyone. And now that memory was waking up. The envelope arrived in legal with no name, no return address. Just the company's own internal logo stamped dead center like a wax seal from a ghost. It was hand-delivered, not mailed. No courier slip. No camera footage of who dropped it off. Just there, like guilt incarnate, waiting to be opened. Meredith sliced it open in front of her assistant and immediately stopped breathing. Inside was a printed folder tree diagram, dense, color-coded, and annotated in a style she recognized from the flash drive. But this wasn't just Mike's forensic map of Gavin's secret mirror system. This was augmented. The logs had been expanded to show full traffic routes, external IP addresses, packet transfers, and credential chains. At the center of the map, one red line stood out like an artery filled with poison. A foreign IP based in Riga, pinged to a residential proxy server. Beside it, a name. Erix Valdis. Gavin's brother-in-law. Not a whisper, not a guess. A confirmed registry match, complete with a utility bill and business license for a logistics consultancy, one that, until 3 months ago, had never existed. Now it was a strategic offshore vendor in our internal vendor tree, flagged as confidential and time-sensitive, ops approval only. The signature of approval? Gavin. In both Slack and on the export documents. The final page was a signed chain of custody affidavit, not filed with our systems, but hand-dated and notarized. At the bottom, one quiet, surgical sentence. No backups. This is the original chain of custody. No edits. No metadata conflicts. No audit gaps. Meredith didn't say a word. She walked the package straight down to internal risk. No calls. No calendar invites. Just the paper in her hand and the fire in her jaw. Risk read it. Twice. Then hit the red escalation button. Not metaphorically. Literally. A physical switch under the department head's desk reserved for urgent board-level matters. 2 minutes later, the general counsel was looped in. 3 minutes after that, the interim chair of the board received a silent push alert to his phone. A Tier 1 compliance irregularity, export violation suspected. Gavin, still shut in his office 2 floors above, was on a call with Anton again, this time using a VPN and a burner laptop pulled from the back of a filing cabinet. His face was clammy, tie pulled halfway off, and his voice strained like a man calling a lifeline in a language he only half remembered. No, they don't have the full trace. I shut down the node. No, listen, the drive he left, I think it was a bluff. He just wanted to scare me. You said this thing wouldn't show up on domestic pings. You said... He paused, then slammed the desk with his palm. Well, he wasn't supposed to have the credentials either. Anton had gone silent, dead silent. Gavin stared at the screen. Are you still there? The cursor blinked, then disconnected. He yanked the Ethernet cord like it owed him something and stood up, panting, pacing. He picked up the flash drive again, clenched it like a weapon, then turned toward his private shredder. started feeding paper into it, anything with his name, his routing slips, his one-on-ones, his Slack transcripts. Too late. Down in Risk, the board's special counsel had already begun cross-referencing the printed access logs with internal audit trails. They matched. Down to the minute. The Slack thread Mike had archived, the one Gavin deleted, had been recovered from a compliance backup Mike had quietly wired through a legacy bot nobody had even noticed running. Mike had created a ghost archive, not to preserve data, to preserve decisions. Every time Gavin bypassed a procedure, rerouted a vendor, or deleted a Slack message, Mike's archive had quietly captured a copy, time-stamped, sealed, tucked away under the radar like a memory with perfect recall. Back upstairs, Gavin's assistant knocked softly. He didn't answer. She knocked again, then opened the door. "Sir, there's a message from Internal Risk. They said it's urgent. Board escalation level." Gavin froze. "What?" "They've asked you to remain in your office and await direct contact." He stared at her like she was speaking another language. Then his eyes fell to the monitor. His calendar had just updated with a new meeting. Emergency session, Board of Directors, 2:30 p.m. Topic: Export control violation, immediate review. He sat down slowly, the flash drive still clutched in his hand, the silence pressing in on every wall. Meanwhile, Mike was back in the same coffee shop, second espresso, still reading that same damn paperback. He didn't look like a man who just detonated a compliance warhead. He looked like a man waiting for the panic to finish running its course. Because timing wasn't about revenge. It was about proof. And now, with Risk in play, the only thing left was exposure. The conference room was soundproof, but everyone outside could feel the weight of what was happening inside. Assistants lingered near printers that didn't need printing. IT leads hovered around their inboxes waiting for escalation pings. Finance stopped sending calendar invites. The board was meeting, and not on Zoom. In person, in that glass tomb conference room where nothing good ever came out unless it was pre-approved, pre-scripted, and signed in blood. But this wasn't that kind of session. This wasn't planned. The interim chair, Harold Fenn, an old-school contract hawk with no patience for PR varnish, opened with a single line. "Mr. Langley, you're not here to explain. You're here to confirm or deny." Gavin sat across the table, sweating through his undershirt, tie limp, the color in his face somewhere between printer toner and ash. Legal flanked him, tight-lipped. He had shaved, but his hands still shook. There were no notepads in front of him, no prepared statement. Just a company-issued laptop, a bottle of water, and a flash drive sitting dead center on the table. Mike's flash drive. A board member tapped it with a pen. "This was found in your possession. You told HR you hadn't reviewed it, yet your activity log shows you accessed the files less than an hour after Mr. Morrison's termination." Gavin cleared his throat. "I opened it, yes, but I didn't understand the context. It appeared to be a personal project, possibly altered." Harold didn't blink. "You're alleging forgery?" "I'm saying," a new voice cut in. "General Counsel. Before you proceed, I'd advise reviewing slide 3. One of the assistants hit a key. The wall screen lit up with a screenshot. Slack interface. Timestamp, April 12th, 06:47 a.m. Message: folder approved, ops only visibility, push through node, GavOpsX. The panel was quiet, then slide 4. A snapshot from the audit logs on Mike's flash drive. Same terminal ID, same message ID, matched metadata. Then slide 5, a dual screen of system logs. Left, folder creation approval. Right, terminal session used to revoke Mike's admin rights. The timestamps were 22 seconds apart. The same machine, the same user alias, the same keyboard. Harold folded his hands. So, while you were creating an unauthorized mirror folder that bypassed compliance routing, you were also initiating the termination of the employee whose logs you were afraid would expose you? Gavin tried to shift blame. I didn't control the terminal that morning. Anton, he sometimes. Anton, another board member said, flipping a document, whose name appears on vendor contracts you approved, but who isn't in our procurement system. Anton, who's registered as the co-founder of the offshore entity your brother-in-law controls. Gavin blinked. The silence in the room deepened, like a second layer of concrete poured over the first. Someone slid a printed org chart across the table, Mike's folder map, annotated with a red marker. This was not built overnight, Harold said. No, said General Counsel. It was built in silence, over months, with precision. Gavin raised a hand, finally showing something close to anger. Why wasn't this brought to me first? Why was a terminated employee allowed to circulate sensitive logs? The board looked unimpressed. You mean the logs he kept after you stripped him of access without cause? Harold asked. The ones you tried to delete before legal issued a hold on your account? I was trying to prevent further confusion. No, General Counsel said, her tone icy. You were trying to shred the only trail you didn't write yourself. They let it hang for a second. Then Harold nodded toward security, who had quietly entered from the back. Effective immediately, Mr. Langley, you are suspended pending full investigation. Do not re-enter any operational areas. Surrender your devices before you leave. Gavin looked around like he expected someone, anyone, to stop this. But there was no one. The DevOps guy who kissed up to him had called in sick. The finance lead he played squash with? Gone quiet since the audit pinged. Even his assistant had already forwarded her resume to HR. Gavin stood up, shoulders twitching, face blank. This is a mistake, he muttered. Harold nodded. One you documented beautifully. Security escorted him out with the smooth, professional silence of people who'd done this before. The door shut. The board sat back. No one exhaled. Not yet. Then Harold turned to legal. Is Mr. Morrison reachable? General Counsel nodded. He is. Good, Harold said, flipping the flash drive between his fingers. Ask him to come in. We'd like to understand how long he's been protecting this company better than we have. When the email arrived, Mike was halfway through a dog-eared copy of the Martian Chronicles, watching rain streak down the cafe window, like gravity finally remembered how to work. He didn't flinch when his phone buzzed, just looked down, thumbed the screen, and read it twice. Subject: Board Request. Confidential Advisory Sender. Margaret Lynn, External Counsel to the Board. The message was short, cordial, clean. We believe your audit trail has preserved operational integrity through what may become a defining compliance event. The board would like your guidance on remediation and system restructuring. Your discretion and participation would be valued. He read it again, then slid the book back into his bag and folded the phone face down. Not anger, not satisfaction, just the quiet internal tick of gears shifting in the right direction. He showed up the next morning wearing the same boots they'd watched him leave in. No suit, no ID badge. Just an access code, pre-authorized by external counsel, and a note at the front desk. Escort to 41C. 41C wasn't a meeting room. It was the war room. No glass walls, no beanbags. Just a secure compliance space with a table, 4 chairs, a whiteboard, and 2 binders thicker than a tax audit in a leap year. Waiting for him inside were Margaret Lynn, Harold Fenn, and a silent man in a blue tie who smelled like litigation and carried a pen worth more than Mike's car. "Thank you for coming," Margaret said, rising. Mike nodded once. "You said it was important." Harold gestured for him to sit. "We've reviewed your logs, the precision, the restraint. Most wouldn't have had the foresight to build what you did, or the discipline not to act too soon." "I wasn't trying to act," Mike said. "Just record." Margaret slid a document across the table. "We'd like you to consult, officially. Lead the internal revalidation of all compliance controls Gavin touched or altered." Mike didn't look at the paper yet. "I'll need full access," he said. "Everything Gavin had, Slack, sandbox environments, audit suppressors, especially the mirror nodes, no filtered credentials, no redacted chains." Margaret exchanged a glance with Harold. He gave a faint nod. "It's already in the contract." Mike scanned the document. One clause in particular made him pause. Clause 7.1.2. Remediation consultant reserves the right to restructure security architecture as necessary to restore protocol integrity. He tapped the line with one finger. "This stays." "Agreed." He signed. No handshake, no speeches, just the sound of an old pen writing something new. When he walked back through the office that day, nobody looked directly at him, but everyone felt it. The room that had once watched him leave in silence now held its breath while he passed. Desks straightened, Slack channels froze. Even the elevator seemed to rise slower, as if the building itself remembered how it had wronged him. He didn't gloat, didn't smile. Just took the key card they handed him, Level 6 access, and stepped into the system like a surgeon re-entering the operating room he'd once been locked out of. By noon, he was back in the back end. By 2 p.m., he was in the mirror folders Gavin thought he'd buried under proxies and vendor flags. By 3:30, he'd mapped 15 protocol breaches, 2 shadow sandboxes, and 1 script Gavin had hard-coded to auto-wipe Slack messages flagged with keywords like risk, export, and IP trace. He didn't say a word, just tagged them all with a red label, reviewed, flagged, restoration initiated. By the end of the day, Mike had sent a single email to legal. Subject: preliminary findings attached. 1 sentence in the body. System integrity can be restored. No emotion, no apology, no told you so. Just what they needed. And for the first time since Gavin fired him in front of a crowd, Mike didn't feel small. He didn't feel victorious either. He just felt necessary. And that was enough. The hallway felt narrower now, not because anything had changed architecturally. Same recycled carpet tiles, same LED buzz from the fixtures above, but because the weight of what had passed through it hadn't fully cleared. Whispers still traveled here, ghosts of decisions, echoes of power plays that had lost their grip. Mike walked slowly, his new badge clipped loose to his jacket pocket. Level 6 access. No more clearance tiers, no more waiting for permissions. The man who once logged entry codes from a monitor nobody looked at now walked where he wanted, when he wanted. The old compliance door was propped open. Inside, whiteboards scrubbed clean, servers purged, policies rewritten. Gavin's name was gone. The plate had been pulled from the glass office hours ago. In its place, just a faint outline, like a scar. Mike didn't stop there. He kept walking past Risk, past the ops bullpen, past the meeting rooms where Gavin used to hold court in front of deck slides and false certainty. He stopped at the intern desk, my desk. I looked up before he said anything. He held out a keycard. I blinked. "Is that? You're led on audit now," he said. I stared at the card. Me. Mike didn't smile. He didn't need to. He just nodded once, quiet and final. Exactly who he told us not to ask. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I took the card. It was heavier than I expected. Mike turned without another word. His boots carried him down the hallway the same way they had months ago. But this time, the walls didn't close in. This time, they made space for him. He passed Gavin's old office without glancing in. The desk was already empty, the windows unshuttered. Just a shell now. Another failed kingdom in a company that had learned, too late, who was actually holding it together. As he neared the elevator, I noticed something tucked into the corner of his screen. A photo. A timestamp. 9:03 a.m. The access log from the mirror node. The moment the folder Gavin had built to bury liability lit up, and Mike's quiet archive took its first breath. 2 minutes later, Gavin had fired him. 2 minutes. One flash. That's all it took.